they say the world changed overnight, that sirens lit the skies over Tel Aviv, that the unthinkable happened, that Mossad itself, Israel's famed eye in the shadows, was blindsided, that headquarters were hit, that the Israeli military's backbone was pierced. And the ripple wasn't just political or military, it was spiritual, it was prophetic, a shaking, a storm, and in the minds and hearts of millions, not just in Israel, but across the nations, fear. Deep, gnawing, paralyzing fear. What do you do when the institutions you thought could never fall begin to crumble? What do you do when what was hidden is exposed, when what was strong is broken, when the very agents of protection seem powerless? There is something in us that ties our peace to the things we can see, to headlines, to governments, to armies, to systems. But what happens when the visible fails? What happens when the walls fall? The word says that everything that can be shaken will be shaken. Not might, will, but why, so that what cannot be shaken may remain. That is the secret, that is the mystery. That's the key you need to hold on to in this hour. Because everything you're watching on the news, in the nations, even in your own life, might be shaking, but heaven is not. God is not shaken. The throne has not moved an inch, and the one who spoke the stars into existence has not lost control of the story. He is not pacing. He is not surprised. And if you are his, then your identity, your hope, your future is not tied to the rising and falling of earthly powers. It is tied to him. Yes, Iran may rise, Israel may be wounded, alliances may fracture, spies may fall, missiles may fly, but you were never meant to build your peace on those things. You were never meant to anchor your soul to the headlines. You were meant to root it in the rock that never moves. I speak to those who are overwhelmed, who have allowed fear to settle in their bones, who can't sleep, who scroll and scroll trying to make sense of what's happening. Hear this: when the earth shakes, heaven still stands. When the visible crumbles, the invisible endures. And when nations tremble, the children of God are called to rise. You see, the enemy would love nothing more than to paralyze you with fear, to use the smoke of war to blind your spiritual eyes. But what if the shaking isn't your defeat, it's your awakening? What if the collapse of what you trusted in is the call to trust in something greater? What if this is the moment God is pulling his people out of comfort, out of compromise, out of slumber, into fire, into focus, into faith? You don't need to understand every geopolitical movement, but you do need to understand this. The shaking reveals what is real. And maybe, just maybe, the loss of what you thought was secure is the invitation to discover the only thing that truly is. For years we've placed our hope in systems, political, economic, even religious. We've trusted in the arm of flesh. We've worshipped stability, not realizing we were becoming strangers to the God of the storm. But now, as the storm rises, he calls you to return, not to the noise, but to the still small voice, to the place where fear loses its power, to the place where peace isn't a feeling, it's a person. The world is being shaken, but you don't have to be. You were made for this hour, not to blend in with the fear, not to echo the panic, but to stand, to be the light in the darkness, to be the calm in the chaos, to be the witness of something unshakable, something eternal, something holy. So let the earth shake, let kingdoms fall, let the news rattle and roar, because the throne remains, and the one who sits on it is not afraid. Let your heart be anchored not in what man builds, but in what God has spoken. For when the world shakes, those who know their God will not fall. They will rise. The chaos in the Middle East isn't just news. It's a sign, a warning, a trumpet blast. We are witnessing the unraveling of what the world once called untouchable alliances, intelligence agencies, strongholds of secrecy and power. But understand this: the chaos is not random, the shaking is not without purpose. What we are seeing is not the absence of God. It is the fulfillment of His word. The ancient prophecies are not relics. They are blueprints, and we are walking through them. These moments are not interruptions to God's plan. They are the very unfolding of it. But here's the part most people miss. Prophecy is never given to produce panic. It is given to produce preparation. The purpose of prophecy is to awaken, not to paralyze. The Spirit of God does not speak warnings to crush your heart in fear. He speaks them to strengthen it. The warnings of judgment are not designed to terrify. They are invitations to turn, to realign, to anchor your soul before the flood comes. And that's the battlefield right now. It's not just in Gaza or Tehran or Jerusalem. It's not just missiles flying through the night. The real war is being waged inside hearts, inside minds, inside you. The enemy wants you so overwhelmed by the noise that you forget the voice. He wants your focus so consumed by fear that your faith begins to dry up. He wants you staring so long into the shadows that you forget the light. Fear is not just an emotion, it is a spirit, and that spirit wants to steal your vision, drain your courage, and silence your voice. But the Word declares that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. So if fear is rising in your heart, it didn't come from heaven. And if it didn't come from heaven, you don't have to keep it. This is the moment to recognize that fear is a choice. It may knock on your door, but you don't have to let it in. You don't have to host it, feed it, clothe it, or give it a place to sleep. When the world starts shaking, when your screen fills with explosions and threats and breaking alerts, you can choose to run into the arms of fear, or you can run into the secret place of the Most High and understand choosing faith doesn't mean you deny the shaking. It means you interpret it through the eyes of heaven. It means that when the storm comes, you don't pretend it's sunny. You remember who commands the wind and waves. When the battle breaks out, you don't say, "There is no war." You say, "Though 1,000 fall at my side and 10,000 at my right hand, it shall not come near me." That's not denial. That's discernment. That's kingdom perspective. Right now, there are millions, even believers, paralyzed by what they are seeing. Fear is gripping churches, freezing movements, silencing voices. But God never called you to live under headlines. He called you to live under His Word, and His Word says you are more than a conqueror. His Word says He will never leave you nor forsake you. His Word says the righteous are as bold as a lion. So why are so many believers living like prey when they were called to be lions? Because they've made fear their teacher instead of truth. They've been discipled more by the news than by the Word. They've been feeding their spirits on crisis instead of Christ, but it's not too late. The shaking isn't here to destroy you. It's here to wake you. It's not here to drown you. It's here to deepen your roots. God is calling His people to rise above the storm, not by escaping it, but by overcoming it in Him. You were not born for comfort. You were born for this. You were born for such a time as this. To stand firm when the world collapses, to shine light when the darkness deepens, to speak life when fear tries to silence you. The hour is urgent, but your soul doesn't have to be. The battle is real, but the victory is already written. Do not be afraid of what's coming. Be ready, be awake, be unshaken, because fear is not your portion. Faith is, in the deepest night, when the world feels like it's falling apart. Something begins to happen that only those who walk in the Spirit can see. The darkness that seems overwhelming becomes the very canvas where light begins to speak. That's the mystery of God. That's the paradox of His kingdom. The darker the hour, the brighter His presence shines. The heavier the grief, the deeper His grace flows. And what the enemy meant for evil, God begins to use for good. You see, when the headlines scream and the nations tremble, we are tempted to lose heart. We hear about attacks, about war, about destruction. We watch images of burning buildings and shattered strongholds. and something in us tightens. Anxiety, fear, confusion. We wonder, where is God in this? Why is He allowing it? But here's what we forget. It's in the darkest moments that the light of heaven shines the most clearly. When all other lights go out, when governments collapse, when strategies fail, when the world has no answer, there is one who has not moved, who has not changed, whose word remains exactly what it was from the beginning. You were never promised a life without shaking. You were never promised peace as the world gives it. In fact, the Messiah said plainly, in this world you will have tribulation, but take heart. I have overcome the world. You were not promised calm seas. You were promised His presence in the storm. And that presence is not weak. It's not silent. It's not distant. It's radiant. It's holy. It's stronger than fear, more enduring than doubt, more beautiful than anything the world could offer. So, if you feel surrounded by darkness right now, good. That means you're in position to see the light of God like never before. You are exactly where He does His greatest work. Not when everything is perfect, but when everything is broken. That's when He speaks. That's when He moves. That's when He shines. God didn't wait until Israel had it all together to reveal Himself. He came in the wilderness, in exile, in the fiery furnace, in the lion's den. He came in the cave, in the storm, in the prison cell. He came in the upper room when the disciples were afraid and locked in. He doesn't run from the dark. He walks straight into it. But here's what we have to understand. The darkness doesn't just test us. It reveals us. It shows us what's really in our hearts. When everything is shaking, what do you reach for? When everything is falling apart, what do you build your hope on? That's where the real battle is, not in the skies over the Middle East, but in your own heart. The light of God is waiting to break through, but it cannot do that if we're still clinging to false security. It cannot shine if we're more in love with comfort than with calling. And this is the moment, right now. As the world feels like it's unraveling, God is calling His people to step out of fear and into faith. Not a shallow faith, but a tested one. A faith that doesn't just sing in the light, but praises in the prison. A faith that declares, though He slay me, yet will I trust Him. That kind of faith doesn't come when everything is easy. It's born in the fire. There's a reason the stars only become visible when the sky is darkest. There's a reason the shepherds saw the angelic host not in the day, but in the night. The darkness was not the enemy. It was the stage. And your pain, your fear, your confusion, if surrendered to God, will become the platform where His glory shows up in ways you never imagined. So don't curse the night. Don't run from the storm. Don't be afraid of the fire, because the God who reveals Himself in burning bushes is still revealing Himself today. And His light is not just meant to comfort you. It's meant to shine through you. The world is watching. Your family is watching. Your neighbors, your children, the ones who have no hope, they're looking to see if there's something real in you. And if all they see is someone who reacts like the world, panicking, despairing, caving in, then what witness are we giving? But if in the darkness they see peace, if in the shaking they see joy, if in the battle they see light, then they'll know this isn't just religion. This is real. This is the power of the living God inside of you. So rise up, not in your strength, but in His. Don't wait for the world to get better. Be the answer in the middle of its breaking. The light of God has not gone out. It's breaking forth, and He's waiting for you to be the vessel it shines through. Let the darkness come. Because the light is greater, the world is watching buildings collapse, watching institutions unravel, watching alliances break, borders shake, and governments spin. We hear of Iranian missiles, of headquarters destroyed, of intelligence breached, of the unthinkable becoming real. And for so many, it feels like everything is falling apart. But what if it's not falling apart? What if it's falling into place? Because in the kingdom of God, What looks like collapse on earth is often the beginning of something eternal. What man calls destruction, heaven may call transition. We see the headlines and feel fear, but God sees a calling, a summons, an invitation. You weren't placed on this earth to merely survive through the shaking. You were placed here to rise in it. You were not called to fall with what falls. You were called to stand with what remains. There's a reason the scriptures speak of shaking. There's a reason he said, "Once more I will shake not only the earth, but also the heavens," not to frighten us, not to harm us, but so that the things that cannot be shaken may remain. That means when the shaking happens personally, nationally, spiritually, it's not because God has lost control. It's because He's purifying what we've built. He's exposing what isn't eternal. He's calling us out of the temporary and back into the eternal. That's what we're seeing right now. Not just war, but a wake-up call. Not just judgment, but mercy in disguise. Because if God let us continue down our path of comfort, compromise, and spiritual numbness without disruption, that would not be love. But He loves us enough to shake us awake. He loves us enough to strip away what we've trusted in, so we can rediscover who we were meant to trust in. And this is where it becomes personal, because while the world may be watching missiles, heaven is watching your heart. What are you anchored to when the strongholds around you fall, military, political, even personal? Do you fall with them, or do you rise with the unshakable? There's something sacred that happens when the earthly collapses. It exposes the eternal. When your identity isn't in a government, a job, a ministry, or a system, but in the one who reigns forever, then no matter what falls, you stand. That's not just theology, that's reality. That's what separates those who survive the shaking from those who are transformed by it. And don't think for a moment this is just about geopolitics. The shaking is global, but the decision is personal. God isn't just allowing structures to fall out there. He's also calling things down in here, in our hearts. Idols we didn't know we had, attachments we thought were holy, pride disguised as confidence, fear hiding behind control. It's being torn down, not to leave you empty, but to fill you with what truly lasts. He's not just shaking the world to change it. He's shaking you to awaken you, because this is not the time to be comfortable. This is the time to be consecrated. This is not the time to blend in with the noise of the age. It's the time to hear the still, small voice calling you higher. You weren't made for the structures of man. You were made for the presence of God. You weren't born to cling to dust. You were born to carry glory, and that means even as things fall apart, you are being called to rise. Not in your own strength, not by willpower or emotion, but by the Spirit of the living God. He is calling forth a people who aren't defined by the headlines, but by heaven's call. A people who don't bend with every storm, but who stand because their foundation is deeper than what's visible. When the enemy strikes, when systems fall, when the noise gets louder, God's people don't retreat, they rise. They shine because they were never called to survive the storm. They were called to walk on the water. They were called to bring the presence of God into the middle of the chaos, to speak peace where there is panic, to declare hope where there is despair, to remind the world that while everything else may fail, there is one who never does. And that is your calling. That is your assignment. Not tomorrow. Now. Not when things get better now. When the world looks like it's falling apart, that's not your defeat. That's your hour. That's your appointment with destiny. So let the shaking come. Let the strongholds fall. Because in the ruins of what was, God is building something eternal. And He's not looking for those who are impressive. He's looking for those who are available. This is your moment. Don't run from it. Rise into it.